Yeah, and I appreciate my brothers here taking the time to connect this morning. My name is Hafiz Chato. I work to support Brother Izzeddin Awamda and the work he does through SADA, Unbounded Stories. So under SADA, which means echoes, we hope to unite folks in a series of conversation with the title Unbounded Stories, so stories that heal us. This is a space for reflection, looking at stories from Palestine that connect Palestinian lived experiences with Canadian communities. SADA is dedicated to amplifying the voices of marginalized communities, including Palestinian stories, and creating bridges through storytelling. Today, we're joined by Eleyan Sawaft, a friend of SADA, a Ph.D. student in Canada whose family remains in Tubas in the West Bank. This brief conversation invites us to listen beyond headlines and consider and ponder upon the human story. So I just have two questions for you, Brother Eleyan, and also would be love to hear your reflections as well, Brother Izzeddin, as someone who also just returned from the West Bank in particular. So, someone and folks living in Canada while your family remains in the West Bank, how do you carry that distance emotionally, and what helps you stay connected to them?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hafiz. And thank you, Azzeddin. Thanks for having me. Um, so this question is very deep, emotionally, politically. But let me say like that, or let me structure my response by highlighting the idea of agony. This idea I like always to talk about it as a Palestinian in the exile, and simply it's the tension of living between two worlds while emphasizing how I maintain connection through relational ritual and storytelling.
Mm,
I carry the distance as a form of agony, which is the psychological and political tension that arises when living in between
mm,
two colonized territories, Palestine and Canada. This emotional weight is what is called in Palestinian literature as al-manfa, exile, which is not just a human condition in this case, but a shared material resonance where my body, even thousands of miles away, bears witness to the displacement and harms occurring at home. It is an inner war, if I can say that, and a sight of constant intrapersonal agony because I live without a title. And I think this is very important to underscore. I live without a title to my ancestral land and without a full sense of belonging in my host land. So
mm,
to stay connected, I engage daily in daily ritualized conversations with my family and specifically with my father.
mm,
Um, and these talks usually are not just about personal well-being or about my study or about how am I. They are always about the land, which my father treats as a beloved companion and an extension of the self. In our culture, we say in Arabic, al-ard zay al-ard, like land is like honor,
mm,
meaning that protecting the memory and dignity of the land is sacred obligation that distance cannot uh, sever.
mm,
My connection also is land-bodied, which means that maybe the distance is bridged through physical empathy. When an olive tree, and I seen this a lot, specifically last couple of weeks in
mm,
Al Mughayyir, in Tubas, in so many villages in the West Bank. When an olive tree is cut down back home, I feel like silvery leaves trembling and the trunk breaking as a trauma in my own body here in Canada. So that's why we just cannot distinguish. Like personally, I cannot say I'm in Canada and I feel everything is okay.
mm,
Sometimes I feel I need to be able to see across different sites and scales. I maintain my roots by translating experiences. I also tell the experience of my father to my colleagues, my friends
mm,
here. I stay connected to my identity by explaining the parallels between Palestinians in Palestine and indigenous people here in Canada. I also listen to the local land here. It's a funny story. One day I was in a teach-in and an individual in that teach-in day was asking me, "Do you have any friends in Canada?" And I responded, "Yes, Saskatchewan or North Saskatchewan River."
mhm,
It was my first friend in Edmonton in Canada. So I think this idea of local land and trying to listen to this local land is also important to stay connected to my home. And then sharing stories of this landscape back with my father, making the two lands speak to one another. Um, and I want to finish by saying that we Palestinians and maybe as other indigenous nations, people around the globe, we should impress a mandate to remember. Years ago, our grandparents used to carry the key and they said, "This is our mandate to remember home." But here, like what helps me carry this distance is again, my parents, my father's constant refrain to hold the ground. And when he says, "Ma tinsa," remember the land or the ground I come from. This mandate helps me stand in my truth, regardless of my current geographic location, viewing my father's persistence in walking the land as a form of agony that I must continue through my own advocacy stories. So, to put it in more relatable terms, carrying this distance is like tending to a garden through a window. You cannot most likely touch the soil directly, and you feel the sting of the frost on the plants as if it were on your own skin. But you keep the connection. You keep the connection alive by constantly describing the growth to those inside and ensuring the memory of the harvest is never forgotten.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for such a beautiful, complex, and comprehensive answer, Brother Eleyan.
Thank
So much to reflect on there, so much good, so much resilience and strength. I'm curious as to your reflections, Brother Izzadeen, that particular allegory of tending to a garden through a window, and also thinking about the specific forms of unfortunate anti-Palestinian racism you experience while trying to do that, while trying to uphold that memory and that mandate to remember and tell your stories. Thank you
Thank
again.
you, Hafiz, and thank you, Alian. I don't think I have any words after that. Those are beautiful words and
Mm,
sentiments. I think Alian dug down into my heart and said what I was not going to say. But I think he said it so beautifully. Look, I think being the question asks about carrying the distance emotionally, and I think as Palestinians we always tell you that we are never far away from our land. Our land lives within our veins, and so yes, I'm physically away from my land. I just returned from Nablus, but my land, my olive trees, the apricot trees, my community always live with me. And so, like Aliya, I think he was he answered
mm,
some of my answers. Living in Canada while my family remains in the West Bank means also carrying an emotional, constant heaviness, a burden, if you will,
mm,
one that is felt in the body as much as it is felt in the heart.
mm,
Look, this morning I woke up and I just wanted to smell my kitchen
mm,
and I didn't know what to do. So while the distance is heavy, I think it is all held together by stories. So this distance is unbroken because it's glued together by a million stories that I've shared and were shared with me while
mm,
I was in Palestine, and of course through the daily conversations with my family and community there. And so, as Alian said, I talk to my family, I talk to my neighbors, I talk to my classmates, I talk to my folks there, phone calls, voice notes, shared memories. And there is this period of time between, because of time difference, between like 5 in the evening till about 10 or 11 o'clock at night here in Winnipeg time, where my friend in Palestine go to bed. And so that I called it the silence, or the time of no response. That's a very, I don't know if people think about that, but that's a very hard time for us Palestinians here because you don't hear from your family for that time. And when you go to bed or you're trying to go to bed, they wake up. And so staying connected is not only about talking about the news and what's happening in the West Bank and the bad things and so on. But it's also talking about laughter and what makes you happy. I talk to my family and friends because I miss their jokes. I miss the meals they cooked. I ask them about their day, and they share with me about their lives and daily lives. And so I hold on to those moving pieces across distance, and those stories help me heal. And yes, I am separated by them by distance, but I fight erasure. I fight distance by keeping those stories alive. Lastly, I think the work that I try to do here in Winnipeg and in Canada is not easy work because often people who don't want the Palestinian story to come out want to dehumanize your stories by telling you, look, that doesn't happen, or that can't be true. So, as Alian says, we stay true to our truth. We stay rooted while we are under attack and there is an attempt to uproot us. And so I think stories play a major role here. And as Alian ended with a beautiful analysis and a beautiful picture with the land and the soil and the garden, I always talk about this picture of the cactus and the dew, the morning dew. There's, this prickly plant, and it's filled with, things that, poke you if you come to it, the cactus plant. But within the bowl of the cactus, the morning water collects the dew.
Mhm.
And I think the Palestinian story, the Palestinian narrative is such a beautiful story, just like that. From if you look at it from retrospect from far away, you may see the prickliness, you may see the harshness because of the situation in the West Bank and Gaza. However, come closer and get to know it. You'll see all the beautiful things that that story holds.
Thank you. Thank you. Such beautiful reflections from both of you. And just to catch you there again, Brother Isidine, thinking about those moments of silence and thinking about how you respond to root yourself either in the front of those anti-Palestinian attacks or even when in that silence, the internal doubt can creep in. Like, what if? What is the silence meaning more? What are those small everyday moments from home that stay with you or remind you of who you are? Like you said, the smell of your kitchen that could chemically balance it and get all those metals and spices and herbs and years and thousands of stories to get that, but we can't, right? But how then do you still remind yourself of who you are on a daily basis? And would love to hear that as well from you, Brother Elian.
Thank you, Hafiz. Yeah, there are many things we try to do on a daily basis to stay connected and remember home. Look, people say, "Oh, you're back," when they meet me in the streets or when, I'm like, actually, I'm not fully back. Let's just be honest here. You can never be fully back from Palestine. And so as my body is here in Canada on Turtle Island, my soul is in Palestine.
Mm,
And so everyday moments that stay with me, they're the small things, the
mm,
sound of the morning call, the prayer, the coffee being prepared because somebody's knocking at the door and it's my neighbor, and they decided to come by for Turkish coffee.
mm,
The greetings of one another, things like
mm,
"Ishtakna," like we have missed you. Things like where have you been? We haven't seen you for a day or two. Are you okay? Or I'm preparing sage tea. What if we
mm,
have sage tea together? And of course, these things remind me of who I am. And despite what people think that we, the Palestinians, have shaped the land, Palestinians have, it's actually the other way around. The land has shaped us. And I think within that, this intimate relationship, it's filled with acts of healing and care for one another. The land cares for us, and we care for the land. And so holding on to these moments here in cold Winnipeg is a way of grounding myself and healing, especially in moments of agony, as Alian says, or moments of loss. And finally, checking in with Alian and people like Alian in our communities, saying, "Hey, I know you're busy. I know I'm busy, but let's get together and share stories." These quiet reminders that we must continue to reach out to one another, support one another, be there for one another, share and amplify each other's stories, is what keeps our connection to Palestine, to the land alive. And lastly, as a founder of Sada, I ask and I tell people, if you don't know who the Palestinians are, if you just get your information from social media and so on,
Mhm.
I am willing to host you. I am willing to open my home. I'm willing to cook for you. I'm willing to show you my life. Just come. And I think that in itself is a radical act of love, a radical act of saying, I am rooted and I'm not going to be erased. And so the invitation stays and the invitation remains open to anybody who's listening to this call to come and have sage tea with me.
Hmm. Thank you. That's such a beautiful description of, just the beauty, the warmth of the Palestinian people that, the generosity of not even thinking twice. And of course, we shared the Turkish coffee with our neighbors, the stage tea, and I would do the same. I'll invite myself over. And, it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. Thank you so much for that. And just that choice to love, even when the neighbor is against someone who is choosing to engage at the level of the prickliness from afar, choosing specific dates or specific incidents as their memory points or their sites of inciting memory. I'm curious to hear from you, Brother Lynn. You had shared a little bit earlier about the ritualized conversations we have with your father. And again, going back to relation to how those are centered on the land and the beautiful relationship with the land. Being so far away and still carrying that emotional distance, what are those things you do? Talking to your father as an example of one to remind you of who you are in the beautiful Turtle Island we're on as well.
Well, thank you. I honestly feel that almost everything from home stays with me. Sometimes I am not even sure, as the dean said, I echo him, my brother. I'm not sure I fully live here in Canada. My body feels like, split into pieces.
Mm,
Some of it back home, some of it here, and some of it still searching because the Palestinian journey does not stop. It's not located in one location and that's it done, right? So some of it still, like I have to search and I have to look at it. Like, where is that, the other part? But I have, but if I have to, like, to name one small everyday thing, it is my village, Tubas. So my village is pulling me back when I feel lost. Every single time I feel lost, I remember the village and it pulls me back. When I lose my sense of like my direction in exile, I think of the ordinary people and also ordinary life there, land, family, friends, cup of tea, the bowl of hummus. All of these things are together remembered by me, from me, by me, and by also other Palestinians. So that memory puts me back on a track every single time I feel I need that kind of energy to correct what I'm doing if I feel I'm lost.
mhm,
So I carry the legacy of my grandparents as well, who taught me that land is kin. And I think this is very deep in that culture and as Dee mentioned that and they always told us land is kin, not something you own, but something that raises you, disciplines you, and gives you meaning. So remembering that keeps me grounded. It reminds me why I am here, what I'm accountable to, politically, ethically, and who I am beyond this place. And the moment you asked your question, I remembered directly, I remembered my childhood. And my childhood was filled with the fabulous work in the 2000, like early 2000, late 1990s.
mm,
Was filled, like with the fabulous work of Egyptian poet Fuad Haddad, particularly his poem الأرض بتتكلم عربي, The Land Speaks Arabic, which was sung by Egyptian composer Sayyid Makkawi. In that poem, Haddad, I mean, briefly says that the earth speaks Arabic your origin is water, your origin is clay. And I think the Palestinian clay is very thick and something that every day I remember when I look at the mirror, I see a lot of things from back home. And that thing keeps connected me with my friends, my family,
Mhm.
every single one, and every single thing back home.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother Eleyan. That's so beautiful. Yeah, I wish we had more time together here, but well, you could ask 20 more questions, but I think I've really been blessed to continue to learn from the wisdom of the land that continues to flow through my brothers here that, speak truth to power. So thank you so much for that. I'm just so grateful. Um, is there any other thoughts, any other comments you'd like to share? And I'm also curious, actually, if I could ask one last question. As educators, how do you engage in this work in a way that continues to call people in a way that leaves them inspired to share these stories, as opposed to feeling shamed and feeling powerless to what really is unfortunately, the global powers that be made more real in your experience, right? Like when I think about what you're sharing here and how, it's always with you, and you feel viscerally things you see on the screen. I relate to that being a Nigerian immigrant, reflecting why about 5 years ago there was a bit of youth uprising pushing back against police brutality, and it was really disheartening having to focus on work and school at the time while seeing people that looked like me and would have been me going through that experience if I was there. So the very fact I was in a quote unquote safer space did not stop the viscerality of it, for one. And also curious, I'm also thinking about, my Ukrainian brothers who I, have relationships with and how they said very similar things, even some who had never been in Ukraine, but, still feel viscerally. So how do you balance that again as educators and people who are simply not afforded that grace to be able to talk about your connection to a land? And while, people will rather say, well, you're safe here, you're a Canadian. Like, what do you mean? Are you not one of us? So how do you balance those things?
That's a big question again, and we could take time to answer that. But I think, Hafiz, is we try to live according to the teachings of our land by being open to conversations, open our hearts and homes to those who we do not know, invite people to come and get to know our stories, and to also say those stories and to stand strong and tell them, and stand with those who have not yet found their stories. So the reason I founded Sada is because I wanted to amplify and help amplify stories of community members who couldn't tell their stories, and I wanted to stand with them in a good way. And so I think in the education setting, as we are either academics or working in school settings and so on, um, we find community and we build community and we tell these stories together. Look, you cannot ignore the Palestinian story any longer. It's right there. You
Mhm.
have to close your eyes and ears and walk away in the dark for you to not see the Palestinian story. It is everywhere in the world now. And so there is a conscious choice that folks have to make now. Either you amplify that story and you stand in solidarity, or you simply walk away. I encourage people to come and walk with us. And lastly, I remind people, I say, I'm not just occupied. Remember that. I'm not just marginalized. Remember that. I'm rooted. I'm somebody filled with love and happiness and care and community and beautiful food, and the list goes on. And so I want you to know that side of me as well. Not, of course, downing or saying occupation doesn't matter. That is a very important story that I carry, but it's not the only story. And therefore, I invite people to come and know me. So, as Sada, as Echoes, we are trying to find those untitled stories and bring them up so people know them. Hafiz, here in the city, and you know this, many folks that come into our work, they often tell me, I didn't know that. Once they hear the stories of my community, or they see the beauty of our thopes, or they see the beautiful zinars that we wear, the connections that we have to our land, they simply say, look, we did not know how beautiful your home and communities were. I say, well, now you have met a Palestinian, you know a Palestinian. Use your stories to come and be part of my story. So, in essence, we keep telling those stories in the best way we know how. Lastly, in closing, I want to say thank you to Alian for coming and sharing their stories with us today and amplifying stories of love and community and most importantly, healing. So, shukran.
Mhm. Shukran. Thank you, brothers. Thank you. Beautiful. Stars. Uh, how do you just reflecting on what we've talked about and knowing who you are and reminding yourself who you are, how do you bring this to an education piece as someone who is not afforded the same grace as other people, perhaps who can speak to their stories of marginalization, displacement, and feeling a connection to a land that is not Canada while living in Canada.
Yeah, thank you, Hafiz. I think, like education is not an easy front that we can talk in and express ourselves. I had experience in the States, in the US, and then I came from the US to Canada. So almost 5 years in the education system uh, between Canada and the US. So I always feel that you should be very creative in educating other people who are willing to learn a bit about Palestine or even about the struggle in so many places in quote unquote the global south, right?
Mm,
Um, so storytelling is one. Actually, I started also learning more and more about storytelling when I came here. It was a part of my program in the US, but then when I came here and I met as a dean in a conference, he was uh, telling his story next to an indigenous educator. And he told me this is our way that we can build, like friendships, relationships with other brothers, sisters, and different members of this community. So storytelling definitely is a powerful tool
mm,
that we can resort to and like try to strengthen our voice and also make connections with other people. But the other thing also I would like to highlight is sometimes we have to adopt any approach that can make us able to do that kind of counter knowledge. Because it's true that many people don't know like a lot about what is happening there, but also there is always people who are saying, oh, like maybe I know a bit, but I don't care. So I always think about how can I do that kind of work? And I think it is harder maybe a bit, and I feel so many tools of how we can create counter knowledge
mm,
can help us. Um, like one of the things that I really like students, scholars, graduate scholars they started to create alternative libraries um, in different locations, different areas in North America. And those libraries, they bring materials and books and short stories from Palestinian culture, from Sudanese communities,
mm,
and they put them in that library. They offer another alternative space for people who want to learn. They
mm,
can find their resources. So I feel these alternative ideas, alternative approaches also help in like talking about the land, promoting the knowledge, but also making connections because some people I feel they just they want to have connection with something. It could be land, could be water, could be air, could be a tree, or anything else. So yeah, I would say that these tools of counter knowledge, I feel they are also important to tell the story in a formal setting, not just like in a community gathering or people that most likely they come to you because they want to hear your story. But also people in the classroom, for example. Not all of them may be interested in hearing your story. So I think these kinds of like putting, like sources here and there also could help.
thank you. That's so beautiful. Storytelling as a bridge building tool and a
Yeah.
revolutionary tool for creating and preserving necessary counter knowledge. And so, wow, I'm learning so much this morning, and I'm really excited for just continuing these series of conversations through Unbounded Stories, continuing this communal healing so that we can continue to heal loudly and heal together. So really appreciate you taking the time to connect with us this morning, Brother Eleyan, and I look forward to many more conversations, many more stories, and just continue to unfurl further these conversations and connections that need to happen. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you, folks.